guys, I'm back. I've been away for a little bit. There's been some personal problems around here and some personal drama that's just kind of weighed down on me lately. But I'm back. I'm on the reviewing couch, and for those of you who know how to read, I am about to review the Chupacabra, the Cherokee Diaries, the Chernobyl, I think that's how you pronounce it. The Chernobyl Diaries. Whenever a horror film comes out in theaters, I'm almost guaranteed to see it. It's just a genre that is so much fun to watch, and it's really amazing to see how it's changed over the course of decades. With this one being a, what do you call it, like, found footage flick, which it's pretty impressive how it's changed probably the most of any horror genre. It's one of those genres that you either love it, you hate it, and I used to really, really hate it. Like, none of them really would have existed had not been for Blair Witch Project, which is a pretty good film. I mean, it has a lot of flaws, but Blair Witch Project is a pretty good, pretty intimidating film. And then other movies tried to do the same thing. Movies like Cloverfield, which is bad, and movies like Quarantine, which is even worse, and just the camera work is so bad, and like The Hunger Games. Yeah. Cheap shot, I know. Horror has just come a really, really long way, especially since the shaky cam stuff. Because it's actually recently started getting pretty good. The movie, it's not a horror film, it might as well be. The movie Chronicle actually did shaky cam, found footage stuff actually pretty well. I really liked Chronicle. And most, but not least, Paranormal Activity. Which, love it or hate it, you can't deny that it's good for what it tries to be. I'm not saying Paranormal Activity is a masterpiece, I'm not saying that, but it's good for what it's trying to be. Let me see if I can put this into perspective. Paranormal Activity is it features a phobia that only a certain amount of people are going to be afraid of. And it is the phobia of the fear of what you can't see. And I think Paranormal Activity, all three films, do a great job of that. And they might not be scary. They might not be the horror film everyone's been waiting for. But whenever you're alone, laying in your bed, and you hear a creaking noise, and that startles you, that's what Paranormal Activity is trying to evolve around. So, what does Paranormal Activity have to do with the Chernobyl Diaries? Well, the same director and same writer. I actually saw all three Paranormal Activities in theaters, and I actually really loved all three of them. It's one of the few trilogies that actually get better over time. And so seeing that this was the same writer and director, I was actually fairly hyped to go see this one. So I went to go see the Chernobyl Diaries, and I hated it. Yeah. No one's really as shocked out there than I that I said that. Chernobyl Diaries is a really bad movie. And it doesn't, and I'm trying to pinpoint why. It doesn't really do anything different from, like, Paranormal Activity, except a lot, actually. Yeah, okay, I'm thinking about this as I go along. Chernobyl Diaries is, it starts off, I'm not gonna get into spoilers, so don't worry. It starts off with, like, Jesse McCartney leading the average band of the typical teenage victims. Yeah, Jesse McCartney. Where has he been? Whenever he's not doing this.
Hi, I'm Theodore. Hi, I'm Theodore. Hi, I'm... Yes, he's Theodore, in case you missed it.
He's been doing this.
Go, go, go!
I don't really know what to say. Chernobyl Diaries is just every single horror cliche you can think of done wrong. There's no suspense. I didn't see any good scares. It was the most predictable film I have seen possibly ever. And I am so shocked to say that. Because Paranormal Activity, you don't see half of that stuff coming. And it's a shock. And every single second of this movie was... you could even predict some of the dialogue that was going to happen. And speaking of dialogue, oh man, I cannot believe that this is the same writer. Because this is... maybe it's not the writing, you know? Maybe it's actually the performance of these actors. The only one I actually knew was Jesse McCartney. But maybe it's just the way they performed it. But none of their hearts were in it. No one seemed to care that their lives were at stake in this horror film, if you could even call it that. It's a really... I can't describe it. It's a real shame, because this was actually a real event, the Chernobyl Diaries. By the way, one sec, before I go into that, why is it called the Chernobyl Diaries? There's no diaries involved. There's not even a book involved. Does it just mean diaries in a story? Because if so, lame. But this is based off a true event. And this isn't actually like a retelling of the true story. I probably should look it up before I did this review, because I'm not really entirely certain of what the real story was. But, this film has a lot of things going for it that are gonna pull it back. And that is those that may or may not have strong emotions over that massacre that happened so many years ago. Because it was a real thing. And this movie is kind of like the aftermath of it. These kids go there and like, this place is supposed to be really haunted. We should figure out, like, we should see if there's anything scary here. And, you know, things start happening. I mean, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's not a major deal. But this could be really offensive to a lot of people who have strong emotions, because Paranormal Activity, you can get away with it being like a ghost or a spiritual form. Whenever you make the deceased, you know, zombies, which is what this movie is, it can be kind of offensive. Now, people have done this before. I mean, this isn't the first time that people have taken a very serious, like, massacre or Holocaust or something and completely made it into, like, basically a comedy. Or just, like, made fun of it. This isn't the first time that's happened, so don't get worked up about that. But it can be kind of offensive. Say this happened, like, I don't want to go into really dark territory, but I'm about to. Let's say someone took 9/11 and turned the people that died in the building into zombies. How would we feel about that? I mean, it's no different now. I mean, decades later, I think it happened, the Chernobyl massacre or whatever, I think it happened, like, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there. I don't know. I don't know that for a fact. But had we lived in that time period, I think people really would have, like, been against this movie, which is one of the problems with it. I just think this is gonna be really, it's gonna be really limited in its fans. And that's not just because it's a bad movie, because it is. The set's actually kind of good. You actually have this weird atmosphere to the set, but the actors are so wooden. The acting is terrible. Oh my gosh, beyond terrible. The camera work is really, really bad. I'm going back to Paranormal Activity again. I'm sorry, but you manage to walk around this house, and you might be scared, but you can still hold the camera kind of steady, and like looking around frantically. You don't have to like do this with the camera. It bothers me whenever I see that happen. And you know what this is? It's I don't want to say this, but it's somewhat true. I mean, they're different in a lot of ways, but Chernobyl Diaries feels like a remake of Quarantine. That's not a good thing, because Quarantine was terrible. I actually think Chernobyl Diaries is actually better than Quarantine, but they feel like the exact same movie at times, and that's not a good thing. At all. So this is taking the found footage that we've come to either like or tolerate, and it's completely taking it steps back. I mean, this movie wasn't scary at all. The best scares in this movie are in the trailer. And honestly, I don't usually want to say this about a movie, because I think almost everything should be tried once, I guess. But this is a movie that I honestly would say, just skip it entirely. Just don't watch it at all. Because, you know why? You've seen it. If you've ever seen a horror film in your life, you've seen this movie. You've seen this movie countless times. Countless. You can also say the same about Cabin in the Woods. You've seen that movie countless times, but you see, it took the formula and did something completely new with it. Chernobyl Diaries, it's just the same old thing. The dialogue's predictable. The camera work, although terrible, is predictable. The acting, so bad. That's all I have to say. I know this is basically... It's based off a real thing that happened. A terrible thing that happened. And they're making fun of it in a way that it just doesn't seem necessary. To my knowledge, this is actually kind of a remake of an actual other film. I think it's just called Chernobyl. I don't think it's called Chernobyl Diaries. But from my own gather, it's a remake of some sort. I've never seen the other one. But just a movie that's so unnecessary, and you've seen it. Even if you haven't seen a horror film, like, in years, you've seen this. Because this movie takes every old cliche and does it the exact same way. They don't revamp it, they don't remaster any cliches, they just do the exact same thing over and over, and I really hate saying that. I really hate saying I hated this movie, because these writers, this director has such potential. The stuff he does is so inventive, so creative, and then he does a movie that's not Paranormal Activity, and it's a piece of crap. This movie, I was so ready to leave this theater, because it was just a really, really bad experience, because I'm watching a movie I've already seen 100 times. I repeat myself a lot now, I know, but yeah. Chernobyl Diaries. Want my opinion? Just skip it. That's the Sketchy Reporter, signing out.